Good evening. This is the video newsletter for Buy Sell Short for Thursday, March 10. Ugly, ugly session today on Wall Street. We had a lot of different news conspiring just at the right time, and we have just the right amount of fear out there where traders ended up just running for the hills today. What started things off was the overseas market last night. We had Asian stocks down sharply on news that China posted a surprise trade deficit. Now, if you actually read the headlines, unlike most traders who don't read anything, the reason for the drop in exports for China was, of course, the shutdown for their lunar year, and that coupled with higher oil price forced them or caused a trade deficit. This is exactly what the market wants to see. I mean, a week ago, this news would have been viewed as good for the market, but today, we've got a lot of events conspiring. There's just a negative vibe out there right now, and everyone's worried about this. What are they calling it now in Saudi Arabia? The day of rage. And, after the early sell-off we had we're looking at the Dow or the SMH chart right now. We saw a really steep sell-off on the SMH on the open, and it started to recover. And by mid-morning, the SMH was flashing some buy signals, and we started to see some nice strength in the market. We saw a lot of momentum in a lot of stocks, and things were looking really, really good. And then, wham, out of the blue, we had some unsubstantiated Associated Press release saying, oh my God, there was a riot in Saudi Arabia and police fired into the crowds. And CNBC got a hold of it, and oil went boom, market went splat, and Bob's your uncle. Of course, after the initial fear, when they actually started reading into what the headlines were, it was from an AP reporter in Egypt who was reporting on the riots in Saudi Arabia over the phone with a supposed witness. And then later on we found out that the riots had a couple of hundred people in it. They were just organized. There is no such thing as any sort of organized rally in Saudi Arabia. And supposedly they shot into the crowd, hit one person, but this was in the southern borders. Like they said, Saudi Arabia capital, Riyadh, business as usual, nothing happening. And, that it laid the seeds of fear, and that's really all that was needed on a day like today. There is more of a chance of Sarah Palin becoming president than Saudi Arabia turning anything into what's happening in Libya. And that's just my opinion. But hey, markets like this breed lots of opportunity once the storm is past, which is why we love to see red days. We love to see the bears and the shorts out there thumping on their chests. We got to give them a win every couple of days or every once in a while so that they'll continue to hang around and let us squeeze them, for the other 99% of the time. Looking at the SMH chart, which was looking like it was going to put in a bottom today before the Saudi Arabia issue started sending traders for the exits. Looking at the chart right now, you can see we've got support just below here around 33.11 to 33.22. We've come off nicely over the last couple of days, and volume, as you can see, has really skyrocketed as the funds, start running for the exit. You'll start to see what SMH is down $3.5 over the last 4 days. So what you would expect to see now over the next couple of days and into next week are the always late analysts coming in and downgrading semiconductor stocks. And, I think Wells Fargo actually did that yesterday. Love seeing downgrades on the semiconductor stock. You get worried when they start upgrading. When they're downgrading, it usually means we're pretty close to a bottom. Support, I'm thinking we're going to see a bounce. That's why I was nibbling a little bit on the SMH April $35 calls today. Granted, the Saudi Arabia news hit, 30 seconds after I bought them, but hey, this is a play going into next week. When the day of rage in Saudi Arabia ends up being a day of what'll probably happen, if not tomorrow, likely Monday or Tuesday, is we will see a fat bounce back in the market. So, we're getting nicely oversold now. Just a little bit more rope to suck those shorts in. If we look If we look at the daily chart, you can see we closed right at the 50-day moving average. We're below that uptrend line, although I could really redraw it. But the 11,800, really where we start to get worried is if we took out the Egypt bottom down there at 11,800. And if you do a Fibonacci retracement from the November lows up to the recent highs, this marks the exact 38% Fibonacci retracement. So this area right here should be rock solid. If we do, and we're likely to see the overseas markets down as they react to what happened in the US today. Ideal scenario tomorrow, we get a gap down in the morning, 100 plus points, that gets bought, and then we're off to the races. Of course, that all depends on what geopolitical news we have out there, but that is the scenario we are looking at. And also, remember, when we look back at what happened at the November bottom, we were bouncing around, it looked like we were down, and then, of course, we got a nice little shock, and we ended up putting in our bottom. So we could be seeing the same sort of thing set up here. 15-minute chart, we had another golden cross failure. That's 2 in a row now. Pretty damn rare to see that happen. And I believe actually the last time we did see that happen was back in November. So, a lot of things lining up just like they did back then. As for stock plays, very few email alerts been going out after the last couple of days. Really because of how the market's been acting. Lots of plays in the chat room. It's one of those markets, and the way I approach it is, when we get in these transitional times, a 50% win rate is probably what you're looking at on a lot of trades. Your goal is really to, unless you go 100% cash in a market like this, is to minimize your losses. Stay in the game, minimize your losses. Don't give back all the gains you had. And as I was mentioning in the chat room, usually a rule of thumb for me is I don't want to give back more than 20% of the gains I made in the previous week. And that's the way I'm looking at it right now. As for some stock plays, COOL ended up being a 100% move from our alert last month. I mean, can we have all our shares back from when we bought this one back there at $1.28? Monster earnings report. This continues to be the hot sector, the gamer sector, and that is why we jumped into this new play yesterday, ZOOG. They make money, low PE, low float, and like I said, just based on a market cap valuation, this should be a $10 stock compared to the moves we've seen in GLUU and COOL. Low float, which means you got to play this one small and be ready for some wild fluctuations in prices. But when the earnings report comes out on this one really, really soon, I think that will be the catalyst to light this one up, just like we've seen on every other gamer stock recently. MCZ was looking really, really strong throughout most of the day, was threatening a breakout at $1.90. Remember, we're waiting for a break of 2 to actually jump into another position on this one. But, the selling in the market going into the close was just too much here. But really strong watch on this one. Would be looking to add it on a break of 2. NEI, we are about to get that golden cross. It's been pretty disappointing over the last couple of days, but can we complain given what the market has done? This stock was actually very, very strong. Stopped out a lot of traders yesterday who expected it to slam lower, and all day today there was a buyer in there supporting this stock. And before we saw that Saudi Arabia news, this stock was looking like it was going to go on a run for $2. Love seeing strength in stocks like this that have been beaten down on a really red market day. And we've got a possible inverted hammer here indicating a bottom on this one. Where I would add to this position now would be a break of 2. I would look to pick up some more shares on a break of 2, and that's how we're going to approach this trade over the next couple of days. Or, a big update or a big up move in the market, say the Dow over 100 points, and if this stock was still sitting around $1.90, I'd look to jump in and grab a position. WZE, we had a huge pop on this one yesterday. This stock is in all the right sectors right now. The problem is that the market, and you've got traders flipping large blocks of share, and it trades on the Scamex. We almost broke out again today, but the market crimped the move. ATRM, like I mentioned in the chat room, streams music. They've got a music site. WZE does the exact same thing. And also tomorrow we've got the iPad 2 launching. great news for Wiz, because they sell a crap load of iPad apps. So, chart looks really, really good here. Minimal downside. 30-cent close sets it free. BNX, our other tax play, was doing really, really well the last couple of days. You had a lot of traders run for the hills today, but we continue to hold support here. This is its sweet time of the year. We picked up some more shares on this one at 31 cents today. 35 cents and under. I'd definitely be looking to initiate a position on this one. Love the risk reward, especially for this time of the year. Oil plays to keep an eye on, of course, are our other two oil plays, QBC. MPET is another one that we jumped into the chat room today. And then, of course, we've got our dog oil play, DEJ. Now if by some weird, miracle, I wouldn't call it a miracle, poor choice of words, something actually does happen in Saudi Arabia, these stocks will likely do well. If they don't, they'll continue to flounder here until or unless oil breaks through that $107 level. So, if you're in the oil plays, make sure they're a really, really small component of your accounts right now. Cash stance right now, I would aim to be 80% cash or more right now. If you're unable to tolerate seeing red in your account as the market does what it's doing right now, you need to be 100% cash. Otherwise, if you're holding a play like NEI or BNX, etc., you hold those plays expecting there to be a little bit of red, but knowing that once the market turns around, you're going to get a fat little gain on it. So that's the stance we're taking right now. And, if you're going to be scrolling through the chat rooms and message boards tonight, this is probably what you're going to hear. We had a big down day. I always pull this video out when there's a big down day. And like I said in the chat room, don't be sad about this down day or a little bit of red in your account. Big down days in the market breed opportunity. They're bringing back a lot of the plays for us to play again. This market is far from over, despite, the doom and gloom that you hear out there. So I'll leave you guys with this funny little video here before we go, and I'll see you guys in the chat room tomorrow. Any questions, feel free to shoot me an email.
Okay, Gur, our mission begins now. Let us rain some doom down upon the filthy heads of our doomed enemies. I gotta sing the doom song now. Doom, 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 doom.
That has essentially been the Bears over the last 6 months screaming doom. They had their one day today, their 1 week. Let them have their fun. They'll be grabbing the Vaseline jar soon enough. See you guys later.